Yo, what's up? This is Matt Carl,
And this is Will Kalen from Gridiron.
and you're tuned in to the Thunder Underground.
Welcome to episode 425 of the Thunder Underground podcast. Trent here as always, and we've got a fun one this week because, as you heard right there in that intro, we've got a couple members of the band Gridiron here on the episode this week. Carl, the vocalist, and Will, the guitarist, are both here to talk about Gridiron's brand new album, Poetry from Pain, that just came out about a month ago. So pick that one up if you have not yet. They've also got some earlier work out as well. We're going to talk about all that coming up here very shortly, but first I need to let you know who sponsors this podcast. DEB Concerts is a promoter based right here in the Tulsa area that has been bringing great acts to the Tulsa area for many years now. Downtown area, at the club level, at the BOK Center arena level, and of course, they book the DEB concert stage every year at Rocklahoma. This year is no exception. Rocklahoma happens on Labor Day weekend, coming up here in just a little over a couple months away. This year on the DEB concert stage, the pre-party, which happens the Thursday night before the full 3 days of Rocklahoma. If you have a 3-day ticket, you can go to the pre-party, which is hosted by DEB Concerts, featuring Sebastian Bach, Trickster, Rocket Science, and the mighty Lita Ford. All of that is included with your 3-day ticket. And then the rest of the weekend on the DEB concert stage will feature sets from artists like Mike Tramp of White Lion. He's been on this podcast. He was on here last year. We've also got Van Halen, a great Van Halen tribute band. We've got friends of the podcast, Dime Store Riot, have been on here multiple times. Great band you need to check out, just like Fist of Rage is another great band you need to check out that'll be on the DEB concert stage. One Night Stand, and Orianthi. Don't want to miss her. Fantastic guitarist. The rest of the Rocklahoma lineup can be found at rocklahoma.com. You can be kept up to date for DEB concerts at debconcerts.com, and of course on the socials at DEB Concerts. Speaking of Rocklahoma, one of our other sponsors here is Rocklahoma Bitches. Rocklahoma Bitches have been at Rocklahoma since 2011. Here we are, nearly 15 years later. They're still going strong. If you've been out there at Rocklahoma, I'm sure you're familiar with these ladies. They travel around the site handing out merch. I'm talking about their Rocklahoma Bitches merch. It's always free. If you ever see anyone charging for it, you know that they're not truly part of the Rocklahoma Bitches. So when you see them, they'll give you t-shirts, koozies, hats, pins, stickers, all kinds of great stuff. They're very charitable. And speaking of that, every year at Rocklahoma, they auction off guitars that are signed by the performing artists. And Christy from Rocklahoma Bitches generally wins at least one of those every single year. And on top of that, Rocklahoma Bitches sponsors Cancer Sucks every year. It's an event that happens towards the end of the year in Tulsa, usually at the Canes Ballroom. Great event that, of course, brings awareness and support to cancer research. Rocklahoma Bitches, all kinds of great stuff. Happy to have them on board. Longtime friends, longtime fans. Looking forward to seeing Rocklahoma Bitches again very soon. Finally, we've got Sunset Tattoo, a tattoo shop located Midtown Tulsa. Their tattoos are done good and proper. They're state licensed, they're Native American owned, and they have a female artist on staff full time. Great work from Sunset Tattoo, and I know that because I've had it done by him. You remember those old commercials, those Hair Club for Men commercials where he's like, I'm not only the owner, I'm also a client, or something like that. I guess this kind of plays into that. I don't know. I'm not just mindlessly saying go get a tattoo from a place I've never got a tattoo from. Jake over there does great work. 30 years of experience at the least. Always great from Sunset Tattoo. If you hit him up on their socials, Facebook, Instagram, at Sunset Tattoo Tulsa, you can see tons of photos of their work that they've done throughout the years. Jake has tattooed a lot of artists. Many from some bands you probably love when they've come through Tulsa, when he's been out and about. So hit up Sunset Tattoo and let him know you heard about him right here on Thunder Underground. All right, let's jump into the subject at hand, which would be Gridiron. Their brand new album, Poetry from Pain, came out May 30th. If you haven't heard that album yet, I definitely suggest you check it out. We're going to talk a lot about it here coming up. You notice from this episode, if you saw the title or you heard when I opened, this is episode 425. That number 25 is going to come up here in a bit as well. If you're a Gridiron fan, you'll definitely understand that. Hey, just a random side note, pun, whatever you want to call it. Anyway, Poetry from Pain, like I said, has been out now about a month. Got a chance to check this one out pretty good before I talked to him. Really excited to, kind of jump into getting to know these guys a little better by having them here on the podcast. They are going to be on the Summer Slaughter Tour, which is coming up very shortly. It's kicking off here. By the time you're hearing this, it could be already going, but it's kicking off here in early July. Heading through most of the month. I guess it's about a three-week to a month-long tour or so with Hatebreed headlining. It's also got Bleeding Through and Fugitive, some other great bands on it, a few different styles of metal represented. Our friends in Insight are also on this bill. If you caught the last episode of this podcast, episode 424, Richie Cavalera talked all about Insight and what they're looking forward to at the Summer Slaughter as well. So we've got a back-to-back 2 episodes here in a row featuring Summer Slaughter bands. Very cool that Josta has brought this one back as he has with some other metal names of modern history, whether it be tours or festivals that, kind of went down either during the pandemic or before the pandemic. How festivals and tours go. They come and go. But Josta, got the rights to a few of the, heavier aspect, the heavier side of touring and festivals like the Milwaukee Metal Fest. And of course now Summer Slaughter. I know he's been involved here with a couple other festivals of late as well. And Joster's always been a huge proponent of promoting not just hardcore music like he's in, but all sorts of metal, all sorts of heavy, and even mainstream metal. He's always been a proponent of defending bands like Five Finger Death Punch or those type of bands a lot of people rip on because, there's got to be a gateway bands for someone to dive into finding a band like Hatebreed or Gridiron. And if you are just finding out about Gridiron because you listen to this podcast, I appreciate it. But if you came here because you're a fan of Gridiron, I obviously really appreciate that as well. Dive into what these guys have to offer. If you're not familiar with them, they are a very much hip-hop centric heavy metal band. And when I say hip-hop centric and metal together, a lot of people, including myself, that always immediately, conjures up like images of the 90s. And there's obviously been stuff going on the whole time since then. But, most people's, inclination when you mention rap and metal together goes to like new metal, like a Limp Bizkit or something along those lines. When there's a lot of bands in the 90s, like besides Biohazard, bands like Downset, E-Town Concrete, that were doing this style of rap mixed with metal, but didn't, quite get into the mainstream like a Biohazard did. But I'm just saying this to let you know that there are heavier bands out there that incorporate hip-hop into it. And hip-hop and metal are 2 genres that don't, necessarily in some people's eyes go hand in hand, but they go hand in hand in my eyes, because a lot of people that love heavy stuff also love the heavier side of rap, like the gangster rap, of the 90s, early 2000s, and clear up to now, modern stuff. I'm not just talking about 90s stuff. Gridiron is obviously not a 90s band. They're a modern band. I'm just saying that because that's kind of where my fan base and knowledge comes from, especially on the hip hop and rap side of things. I know of artists currently, but not too many enough to say that I could call myself a fan of metal and hip hop in the current sense. I am definitely a fan of metal in the current sense, but when it comes to hip hop, my love lies, in that old school stuff. But that's neither here nor there. The point of this is that this band is incorporating a style of metal that is not represented enough, in my opinion. So maybe Gridiron will be that band, that starts maybe a little revolution. And speaking of that, Biohazard is a band I just mentioned and that comes up in this podcast, and they just released, by the time you're hearing this, it'll probably have been about 2 weeks ago, they released a brand new single called Forsaken. It's their first single in 13 years. First single off their upcoming album that should be out sometime here in 2025. And that'll be their first album in 15 years. So I'm super excited to see Biohazard back in the fold. Hey, maybe we can get a Gridiron out on tour with Biohazard or something. Wouldn't that be great? But in the meantime, like I said, you can see Gridiron live on the Summer Slaughter Tour. You can check out the brand new album Poetry from Pain. Check out their album from 2022 called No Good or Goodbyes. These guys are great. So let's just jump into it and hear what Matt Carl and Will Kalen have to say about Gridiron.
We definitely kind of branched out a little more as far as like the sound goes and stuff with this record, and the overall response seems to be really good. So definitely thrilled with everything so far.
Yeah, I noticed that on the sound a bit expanding a bit. So just kind of speak on how you feel it expands on the musical kind of style path you guys set with No Good at Goodbyes.
Yeah, I mean, I think taking and everything that I've worked on with any band is just like building on what was there previously. And it's just like a moment in time. Like we couldn't write that record again now, I don't think. It just whatever your influences are at that time just come through in that record. So everything I do is always just trying to be like a level up. And I think everybody leveled up on this record. And it was a bit more of a collaborative approach on this record. And more people contributed more ideas, and I'm just super happy with the way it came out.
Was the debut album more your kind of vision? Like you wrote most of it, is what you're saying?
Yeah, so like for the first really three releases, I wrote all the songs and then worked with, obviously there was ideas coming from other people, but this one it just felt like we had more time together in the studio, we had more time together practicing. Practices are kind of few and far between these days, just given that I live in Michigan, everybody else lives in the Philadelphia area. This
Okay.
band was never supposed to do this level of touring and playing and writing. It was literally just a fun idea we had during COVID. So the distance can sometimes make it difficult from a writing perspective, but we had more time this go around to kind of get together and bounce off ideas and like write songs together. And it was just a much more collaborative approach, which was awesome.
Was it a lot of in person, or did you do a lot of it like this, like through Zoom, or how did you guys manage that?
Yeah, a couple in-person practices, just flying out to Philly, getting together for the weekend, just hunkering down in the practice spot and just like banging out ideas. We do a lot of stuff through like we all have our own kind of demo rigs. So writing with programmed drums and then just kind of getting the basic skeleton together and then fleshing it out in person. So probably the majority of it done just through our own demo rigs and then final like doing the final pieces together in person.
Personally, listening to the album, the track that, I latched onto the most was the title track, Poetry from Pain. Kind of speak a little bit on the writing process on that and like why you guys decided that was the perfect, whether it be the song or the title for the title track.
Yeah, I mean, I'll speak to like the musical side of it, and then Carl can probably speak to more of the lyric side. But that song is my ode to MX versus ATV Unleashed, a hilarious PS2 game that I played a ton growing up, and the soundtrack is like very of the time, and I just love that style of music, and wanted to write a song that was a little different than previous material, a little more pop structure, a little more. I don't know. It's obviously like a bounce part, and there's still like hardcore elements in it, and kind of like gridiron core to it. But just kind of branching out a little bit and adding some more melodic elements. Obviously, having Nothing Nowhere on the song provides a super awesome melodical, piece to it. So, yeah, happy with that one.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think it's one of those things that when you get tracks demoed out and you just listen through them, there's one that kind of stands out to you, one or two that will stand out to you. And immediately when I heard the demos of that track for the first time, I was like, this got to be the title track. Um, and I think it's definitely, a song that's a little different than, what we have done previously. So I think it kind of fit into that spot pretty well. And to Will's point, having Nothing Nowhere on there, kind of added an element to this song that we haven't added to any songs before this record. So I think it was cool to have that as the title track just because, to Will's point again, it still has the gridiron core, but there's definitely elements in that song that are new for us.
Yeah, I'd say even from like a lyrical standpoint, it's definitely a little more like introspective. We love Carl loves to do, awesome one-liners, and this song was just a little bit more serious, which is something that we've never really done before. So it was a cool foundation of like being able to do that in future records. Like each record just kind of like a building block for what's moving next, and I'm always trying to think a couple records ahead.
I mean, when you say thinking a couple records ahead like that, is it always just still in the moment thing of how you're feeling whenever you're writing?
Oh, you just caught me in a little catch-22 here. I would say, yeah, I mean, you're thinking both present and future at the same time. It's like, okay, where do I want this to go? But you can't force it. So it's like at that time, if where you want to go, there's songs I've written that it's like, all right, I can see us moving in this direction, and everyone's just like, this sucks. And I'm like, yeah, it sucks too. So you just got to stick with what makes sense in that moment. And sometimes there's songs like Poetry from Pain that feel like a nice setup to the next one. Those are just like happy accidents. So you're like dual braining it. You're like thinking, all right, let's stay current, but also where could we move in the future?
Well, Still Playing for Keeps is another track where, like you mentioned, Nothing Nowhere, you've got guests on that as well. Like when you're writing, like I'm assuming you wrote all the lyrics of every song. So like when you give the lyrics to another artist, like how do you decide that they should handle this verse, or do you have
Yeah,
them bring in their own words, or
yeah, I'm a big proponent on if I'm asking another like vocalist or rapper or whoever it may be to do a guest spot, that means that I trust them completely to not only like deliver on the track, but write their own lyrics. Like
okay.
whenever someone comes to me and asks for like me to do a guest spot on a record, if they already have the stuff written out for me, I'll just say no. Like I just think that's like a whole part of it. You know, if you want
Yeah.
someone on the track, you want them on the track. You know what I mean? So, definitely let all those guys cook on their own on that song. Just send them over the beat and they did their thing on it.
So is that all you do? You send them the beat. You don't send them like what's your idea of like the thematic of the song or anything?
So basically we that song was a song that we recorded on a comp a few years back, and we pulled the guitars from that song and turned it into a beat. So basically, the basis of the song, content wise, had didn't change. The chorus on that track are lines from the original song that I took and just kind of like altered around a little bit and made into the chorus.
Okay. I mean, you guys have had several tracks in your history now already with guest vocalists. Is that something that it's like once you have a track done, you think this would be great if I got so and so for it, or is it like born out of talking to one of your friends and saying, "Hey, we should do something together at some point," or I assume both ways.
Yeah, I think both both are in play. One thing, it's always a good idea, or it's always like fun to think about having guest spots on songs until it comes time to like perform them live. And then the person isn't there and like you're like scrounging trying to find like another homie to like fill in the spot or something like that. So one thing I wanted to do with this record, from a lyrics and vocal standpoint is to still include the guest spot dynamic of the band because, I think from the start we've done that, but we kind of did it in a way in this record that we can still perform these songs live. Most of the guest spots are on songs that like we probably won't play live. Like Still Playing for Keeps, I don't know if we'll ever play that song live because there's a lot of moving parts and stuff like that. So that was definitely something that I had in mind for this record, and I think we did a good job with that.
Mascot, is a single you guys have been pushing for a few months, and you got a great video out for it as well. And that video has, that kind of hip hop rap vibe to it and the non-live parts of it. How do you kind of balance that to where it seems natural and not kind of like forced? Because I mean, that definitely didn't feel forced, but I'm just asking, like, how do you kind of manage that?
I think you just gotta keep it real. You
Yeah.
know, like in a situation where we're straddling the line between rock, metal, hardcore, and rap, it's like you're always constantly hyper aware of what you're doing, and just like trying not to be corny. And at the end of the day, we've always had a bit of like not a gimmick, but like tongue in cheekness to what we've done. So you can kind of straddle that line, and it's like, oh yeah, Gridiron clearly rented a Rolls Royce. This is obviously not one of their cars, so it just comes across as like funny. So we just kind of ride that line of like humor and then obviously all the genres.
Yeah, we never really like put ourselves in a corner when this band started. That kind of gives us free range to kind of do whatever we want. And that's all we want to do is whatever we want to do. And, if people like it, that's awesome. If not at the end of the day, as long as we're happy with what we're doing, that's what's most important to me and the rest of the band. But yeah, I just think that, there's a very fine line to walk, making this type of music. And this type of music obviously is not for everyone. But everyone in this band is extremely self-aware, which I think plays a huge role in us, kind of being able to pull this off.
Yeah, because I mean, metal as a whole, is always fairly inclusive, but there's always sects of people that, are very hardcore about being gatekeepers, and rap is always one of those things that come into play for a lot of those guys. So is
I'll
your,
say that.
is your mindset just like fuck that, we're doing what we want, right?
Oh, definitely. We just
Yeah.
did like 12 days with Sanguisugabog, 200 stab wounds, and mutilatred.
Oh,
And
wow.
when you look at the flyer, we're the only logo you can read. And I am saying that with a lot of love because my daily life, I'm listening to all of those bands. So we weren't sure, like, are we going to be able to win over this fan? Are they just going to dismiss it as like rap rock or whatever? But no, like every night we'd win over people, and it's like it started the same way every time. People just being like, all right, there's a heavy riff, but he's rapping. And then like 10 minutes in, they start banging their head a little bit. And by the end of it, they were like all in. So it was a good feeling because I think like if the songs are good, people in the metal world respect it regardless of what it sounds like. So it was just like a good, like empowering feeling of like, yeah, we can kind of play to like whatever the crowd is, which was cool.
Another, just I'm sure you've been asked this a few times during interviews, but you guys had the song 25/8, and then the new album opens with now the fact that you're 26/9. Does that mean in the future we're going to be 27/10?
I think you know one of the names of the tracks on LP3. So
Okay. So you
We
feel like
have to
this will be
believe
an
in
ongoing kind of thing?
yeah, 40 years from now we'll be talking about like 32/19 or something like that.
we've been doing it live where we do 25/8 opening the set and then immediately play 26/9. And eventually like we have some shirts that say 25/8 on it. It's like, oh fuck, we gotta scrap this shirt. It's we're 26/9 now. We can't be printing this anymore. But
Right.
no, it's again like right in that line of like humor and just having a good time. That's really the basis of all of this. If anybody takes it too seriously, that's on you.
But when you play those songs, are they like just melded together? There's no gap to where
No
it's
gap. Like
okay.
immediately as soon as 25/8 ends, the drums start on 26/9 and it just like bang bang. And it's like two pretty hard tracks back to back.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think 26/9 is like crazier sounding than 25/8. So it's just like everything about it evolved. So I don't know how the hell we're gonna write 27/10. Maybe there'll be like, I don't know, gravity blasts or something on it.
Live artillery going off in it or something. We
Right,
gotta figure
right.
something out.
Where you guys, I mean, I haven't seen you live, but are your live shows kind of like, because a lot of bands that are hardcore bands specifically, it's or like the Ramones or something where it's just one after the other. There's no talking between the songs, or how's your live show laid out if it's a full set?
I'll do a little bit of banter. It's your normal, thanking the bands, thanking the
Yeah.
promoter, stuff like that. We always play like beats, like instrumentals in between breaks and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm not radio silent in between breaks or anything like that.
Yeah.
The beat thing has been really cool because like we'll pick beats that are specific to that city and
Oh,
play
okay.
those in between songs, which is cool. Xavier, our guitar player, is the guru on the looper pedals, so he's usually updating that with like when we just played Detroit, it was like a bunch of Detroit artist beats, which is cool. So yeah, we try and keep a good flow to it. We've been working through the set list now that we have the new album out. It's like try to figure out what songs go where. So you figure that out over time. Just kind of watch the tape and figure out what worked and what didn't work. But that's the fun of putting out a new record is figuring out what songs are going to make it onto the set list and pulling out some ones maybe we don't play all the time or putting on, kind of removing some of those we've been playing for a long time. It's always fun to kind of mess with the set list.
Do you guys change your set list up, throughout a tour, or do you kind of stick with one, like rehearse it, or
We actually talked about on this upcoming tour with Hatebreed in July of having a couple like ready to go and just to keep it interesting for ourselves because I think playing the same set night after night can just become a little redundant. So you're having a couple in the back pocket where like if it's a really crazy show, like maybe we play this song or it just depending on the vibe of it. I feel like that's what's nice about having such a wide array of types of metal within the album is like, if it's a more hip hop driven show, we can put in these songs. If it's a more metal driven show, we can put in these songs. If it's a more hardcore show, we can put in these songs. So it's just like kind of building it to whatever the situation may be. It's literally like play calling against a
Yeah.
defense. It's like, all right, we know we're going up against this opponent. We got to put in these songs, you know.
Well, you mentioned Hate Breed, and you guys are on Summer Slaughter. Kind of talk about what that opportunity means for you guys being on such a, it's a great, strong metal package and headlined, of course, by probably the most successful hardcore band ever, Hate Breed.
Yeah. I mean, to dream come true, I mean, Satisfaction is like one of the most important records for me when it comes to getting into hardcore and stuff like that. And from a band that started during the pandemic as, a band that wasn't supposed to even record songs. And now we get to do 3 weeks with, one of the most iconic hardcore bands of all time is definitely a really, really cool feeling.
Yeah, that was one that like when it came across the desk, it was like, all right, whatever we have to do to make this happen, we're making it happen because when Hatebreed calls, you don't let it go to voicemail. So very humbled and excited for the opportunity. And this is the longest tour we've ever done. So
Oh, really?
it was a good test run with Sammy Sugabog to like see how it all goes. Everybody in the van, it went like perfectly, no problems at all. So super excited for the opportunity, and it's going to be a really fun time.
Well, seeing Joss to bring back Summer Slaughter and, have it, headlined by Hate Breed and have, some strong like metalcore and thrash and you guys like you're not specifically hardcore, but you fall into that category. So what do you think a tour like this in the metal world in 2025, means for hardcore? Because it's kind of always been a genre that has been right under the radar, to the mainstream at least.
Yeah, I would say now that it's way less under the radar than it's ever been. Hardcore is just now compared to, even 5 years ago, and especially like 10 years ago, it is just leaps and bounds bigger than it's ever been, back until like the 90s, obviously with, Biohazard and stuff like that. It was huge then too, but it's kind of having that same peak that it did then in the 90s, I think, where it's just, it's way more accessible now. A lot of people are finding out about it that, a few years back may not have found out about it. So I think it's a really, really good time to do this tour, and we're in a really good spot with it. So.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it could be happening at a more perfect time because it's just a melding of a lot of different cultures. And the package is really solid and covers a lot of different ground between metal, hardcore, thrash, like all those subgenres. And it kind of hitting this peak right now, like Carl said, of popularity with hardcore. I just think it's like the perfect timing. So super excited.
You mentioned Biohazard, and I see, the poster on your wall there. When I first heard you guys, that's immediately what I thought of was Biohazard, even though your vocal style doesn't sound exactly like his, but most, like you said, rap core or whatever you want to call it, like most bands that incorporate rap and metal, it was always kind of like not just straight up metal or straight up hardcore. There's always like other elements in there. And you guys aren't straight up that way either, but you're way heavier than most of those bands outside of like Biohazard. So I would
Yeah.
assume they're a major influence for both of you since you brought him up and you got the poster on the wall.
Yeah. Yeah.
Huge
This
influence. And
band
like,
probably would not exist if Biohazard didn't exist. So.
Okay.
just me playing music in general, like I just love bounce and groove, and they were the absolute masters of that. And so, them just I don't know, something about it is comes through with us for sure. It's a total comparison. Obviously, musically, if you put them up to each other, they're not alike whatsoever, but just general vibe and what we're going for. Biohazard is certainly in the DNA. I mean, even down to like the Roadrunner and then now with us on Blue Grape Connection, all those things play together and it just feels like we're trying to have that same type of moment.
Well, Carl, I mean, you've mentioned like Satisfaction and Biohazard. Did it start with metal for you, or did it start with rap, or where was your beginnings?
It started with hip hop for me.
Okay.
I had two older brothers, who were about like 5 and 7 years older than me. So like when I was like 10, they were like in high school. So they were really into like hip hop and like breakdancing and graffiti and all that stuff. So they would always kind of like on the low pass me like their CDs and stuff like that. So I got exposed to hip hop at like a really, really young age. And you know, then afterwards, I found hardcore bands that had hip hop influence like Biohazard and E-Town and stuff like that. So, just kind of falling in love with heavy music and already being in love with hip hop and then realizing that there are things that exist where those two things are together. That's kind of what pulled me into heavy music. But it was definitely hip hop way before I had any idea even what a guitar was. So
But when you started performing, did you start in hip hop or did you start
no,
directly in? Oh,
no, I've written a lot of like hip hop stuff. Never put anything out. Don't know if I ever will. But yeah, so our my first like live performance myself personally was with hardcore bands.
okay. I'm assuming as a guitarist, you've worked with a lot of vocalists that aren't hip hop influenced. Like, is it harder for you to write a guitar riff around that because you've got to write it more rhythmically at times, or like how does that process work for you as a guitar player?
Yeah, I mean, at first I wouldn't say anything changed. It was just like writing a song and then Carl kind of works his magic around it. I'd say on Poetry from Pain, just the record in its entirety, there was definitely more of a conscious effort to consider the vocals. Just kind of part of that evolution and thinking forward of like, all right, maybe on this song we pull back a little bit and this is more of a vocally driven song. And you can't have everything going 100% all at once, or otherwise it's the song doesn't make any sense. So like certain elements need to pull back to let other moments shine. So definitely was a bit of a learning curve over the past like 5 years with Gridiron of trying to figure out the best way to write a song around Carl. But I would say it's been a good learning curve and it's helped me expand like my writing abilities. And I love music that has interesting vocals and interesting parts. And this is certainly no exception to that.
Is it mostly written around you putting a song together and then Carl putting vocals and raps on top of it, or do you ever send him like a track, that you had just some words you would come up with and then you write around that, or how's that?
I always it's always vocals last. It's
Okay.
always lyrics last. So my kind of writing style is I just constantly think all day about things like lines and stuff like that. And whenever something comes in my head, I just throw it in the notes app. And then once a song, once Will sends like a demo track to me or whatever, then I'll go into that notes app and I'll kind of start like putting the puzzle together, so to say, or I'll find a topic in there and then I'll write the lyrics after that. So usually it's me writing last.
And I'd say from a couple song perspective, like especially Poetry from Pain, the title track, I went into it knowing like, okay, this song is going to be more vocally driven. Didn't know what the lyrics would be or what the hook would be or any of that, but just knowing like, let's pull back a little bit. Let's make this just like a solid structured song without too many frills from like a guitar standpoint. And then Carl worked his magic from a lyrical standpoint.
Will, where's your background lie in metal? Because, you can hear in your guitar both hardcore elements, you can hear thrash, kind of almost Jeff Hanneman kind of elements at times, and like a lot of stuff going on, even like black metal almost at times, and on the new album, I feel like. Is it all of it for you?
Yeah, it's all of it. I listened to everything from yeah, I mean everything from the Beach Boys to Cannibal Corpse. Like I love Toto. I love just really well-written music. But it definitely started in metal, like playing in metalcore bands and stuff in high school, and then kind of just expanding. I grew up, my dad runs a radio station, so grew up around a ton of classic rock. Like Boston is one of my favorite bands of all time, and just like taking those little pieces from everything. Like there's songs that are influenced by things that shouldn't make sense. And it probably only makes sense in my head of like I pulled this idea from this Boston song. And you're like, I don't, what are you talking about? But in my head it all like comes together. So yeah, it's just like a melting pot of a ton of different genres and just different guitar music. But I've been playing guitar since like fifth grade and I just love playing and learning different songs. And I never was like a scale guy or like any sort of theory or anything. I just like doing what sounds right. Although I am trying to learn some theory, it's really fucking hard to learn. So slowly but surely trying to learn some just to again kind of like build on what the base I have and just keep growing. But yeah, it's always been metal and never just like one particular thing. But for Gridiron, it was always like this idea. Shout out to my guys, Mind Force from the Hudson Valley. They coined this term Street Slayer. And I would say Gridiron has that vibe of like taking crazy Hanneman Slayer riffs and then making it more hardcore with the vocals and like breakdowns and stuff.
I like that. Well, I mean, you guys have mentioned a few times, and I've read it in other interviews you guys have done about the fact that Gridiron was born out of the pandemic and was just kind of like a thing to do for fun. Like, at what point was it that you realized this is going to be our full-time focus? Or like, was it one of you saying, "Hey, let's do this," or was it just a collective subconscious thing where it just happened?
Yeah, I think it kind of just one day just was like, all right, like we're on LP2 now, like out, and it just you just blink and you're there. You know what I mean? So I don't know if there was any like specific moment for me. It was just kind of everything just started happening, and none of us were like we need to do this or anything like that. Like this, everything about this band has happened organically, and it'll continue to be that way. Um, Nothing has ever been forced, we've never been pressured to do anything, and I think that's what makes this all work is that we're all just doing it because we have fun doing it and we want to do it. So just ride it till the wheels fall off.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there was ever a point, like Carl said, it just like felt right the entire way through. I'd say maybe probably the most pinnacle moment was like when we started working with Blue Grape, of just like, oh, so we're really gonna do this. Like we're inking a contract here. Like we're really gonna do this. But it never felt like, we have to, are we really gonna do this? It was just like, yeah, we're gonna do this because this is fun. And why would I not want to do this and play in front of people and have like awesome shows and record music with my best friends? So that if there was ever a moment, it would probably be that. But it's just like I'm very much a go with the flow type of person. And I'm like, if this is the stream that's running, like I want to be on it because it's a really fun time.
Well, I'm assuming, you've been at it for a while. Where there are times where you were like really pushing, like, oh, we gotta, try to get a label, try to get this, and then now you're at a point where it's way more freeing, or have you always had that mindset?
We've always had that mindset. We've
Okay.
never been like seeking out the label or seeking
Yeah.
out whatever. It just seems to arrive on the doorstep. And for that, I am very fortunate and grateful for those opportunities. And I also think that's why it works, where it's not like beating down the door trying to get into those things. Because I think that comes across to the listener as well. If you're really trying to force something. And for us, it's just like whatever comes our way, if it makes sense, let's do it. And not try and force anything.
Well, speaking of what comes your way after Summer Slaughter, like what could we expect for Gridiron moving forward? Just more promotion of Poetry from Pain, or what's the plans?
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna keep the train moving here. We're gonna be slowing down a little bit after the summer tour, just because like I'm getting married in October. There's some other things happening personally. So 2026, we're gonna be hitting it hard. Continue writing, more shows, a lot more to come in future months, but we aren't slowing down by any stretch.
Total random note, I can't remember which song. I think it was 25/9, but one of your songs you mentioned Grand Rapids. And I know
Yep.
you said you're from Detroit, or was that, I mean, Carl was the one that mentioned it, but was that you that's from Grand Rapids, or where are you from?
Yeah. So I'm from Grand
Okay.
Rapids. I play in another band called Never Ending Game, which is based out of Detroit.
Okay.
Um, People always just kind of mix up the two. Grand Rapids is probably 2 hours from Detroit.
Yeah.
So if you're doing this right here, oh, I gotta do it this way because it's backwards. Detroit's over here. Grand Rapids is, I gotta do it the other way. Here's Grand Rapids. Here's Detroit. So that's a classic Michigan move. Put the palm up and point where you're from. But yeah, so I live in Grand Rapids. Carl is originally from Boyertown,
Oh,
and
okay.
we just loved the idea of representing our cities that are not major cities. And now we've probably played to more people and had people yell back those lyrics than the combined populations of both of our hometowns.
There's
So
like there's like 10,000 people in Boyertown. And it's the
we
fact
played to
that
like
like we can go to Europe and play like Outbreak Fest and there's like 7,000 people there screaming Boyertown. Yeah, like to Will's point, there was more people there screaming Boyertown than actually live in Boyertown.
I do love the idea of like a guy from Germany looking up where Boyertown is at because he heard it in a song.
Yeah.
It's pretty
Or
awesome.
like someone like making a trip here, being like, dude, I need to go to Boyertown. This guy doesn't shut up about it. And then they just come here and they're like, this is it. Like
There's just a
this is what you
farm
talk
here.
about.
Right. Yeah, I can't think of a specific example, but there's been many times throughout the years where I've been like on a road trip and see a sign, and I'm like, I remember that from so and so's song or whatever.
That's awesome. What's
But I
your
mentioned,
hometown? Maybe we'll work it into a song.
but I mentioned Grand Rapids because I'm flying there in 4 days. So
Really?
yeah, just randomly. But I'm going to work Electric Forest at
Oh,
the
nice.
Rock
Hell
Parade.
yeah. Up at Rothbury. Hell yeah, that's awesome. And when you're here, I'm gonna give you a recommendation. If you can get
Okay.
away, you got to go to the Station Grill. Amazing burger, like top tier burger.
Okay. The station?
The
Yep.
Station Grill.
Okay.
Put it on the list.
Will do.
Grand Rapids Airport, beautiful airport. It's a
Yeah,
tiny,
this is my
small one, but it's nice and easy to get through, easy
yeah.
security. I fly out of there all the time. Very nice.
Yeah, this is like my fourth year in a row, and yeah, and I always love that airport because it's easy to
Oh,
just
hell, you
get the
know them,
rental
yeah.
car and get out of there, you know?
Dude, so they're actually expanding it right now. They are expanding the GR airports. There's a little bit of construction going on. So,
Okay.
but yeah, that's awesome.
Right on. Well, man, I absolutely, loving the new album. Appreciate you guys taking the time with me, and I'm gonna try to see this Summer Slaughter tour when it hits Oklahoma City in July. So looking forward
Oh
to
yeah.
that.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Well, find us. Would love to chat, man.
Yeah, thanks
Yeah.
for having us on.
There you go, Will Kalen and Matt Carl of Gridiron. A huge thank you to Shane from Adam Splitter PR for his continued support of this podcast, and a massive thank you to Will and Carl for taking some time out there to hit me up on Zoom to have a chat about Gridiron's brand new album, Poetry from Pain, and several other things, as you heard there. Like I've mentioned a couple times, and like they mentioned, Poetry from Pain is out now. Check it out if you have not. If you've made it this far into this episode, I assume you're interested. So you've got a couple full-length albums there from Gridiron you can check out, and you can also check them out live here coming up on the Summer Slaughter Tour with Hatebreed and many other great acts. So look up the dates on that, see where it's coming close to you. As I mentioned right there, I'm going to be attempting to hit up this stop that's happening in Oklahoma City on July 12th. I'm recording this a little bit in advance, but I should be home during that time, so I'm looking forward to hopefully checking that one out because Hatebreed is always a band that is absolutely stellar live. I'm really looking forward to seeing what Gridiron can bring live. I've never seen them. And like I mentioned up front, Insight is another band on that bill who I've seen live a couple times, but it's been quite a while since the last time. And there's a few other bands I'd really love to see, like Fugitive. So again, Summer Slaughter Tour, check it out. See where it's coming near you. Check out Gridiron. Follow them on all the socials. I know they're Gridiron Hardcore on a few of those. If you just type in Gridiron, you're probably going to get something about football. But just keep digging. Gridiron Music, Gridiron Band. Do those searches. You'll come across all the socials. Hit them up. Give them a follow. If you're new to them, let them know you heard about them here. If you're new to me, I appreciate you coming here because you're a fan of Gridiron. There's so much stuff you could check out. As you can notice in this title, 425 episodes. So there's 424 episodes previous to this. Over 10 years worth of episodes. Summer Slaughter Tour and Hatebreed. Three different members of Hatebreed have been on this podcast. Florida Frank, Wayne Lozenak, and Matt Byrne have all been on this podcast. A couple different members of Killswitch Engage. Like I mentioned with the Summer Slaughter Tour, Insight, Richie Cavalier has been on here 3 times. The most recent time was the very last episode. I've also had on members of Seven Dust, Corrosion and Conformity, Hellstorm, Shinedown, The Black Dahlia Murder, Megadeth, Toxic Holocaust, Battlecross, King, Deep Purple, Twisted Sister, Queensryche, Saliva, Guns N' Roses. Shooter Jennings has been on here. Members of Kiss, both Gene Simmons and Bruce Kulick have been on this podcast. Members of Journey and Bon Jovi. See, it's not all super heavy. It's just rock music, and I love rock music. You can dig through all this plethora of styles of rock that have happened over the past decade on this podcast. If you're here because you love heavy stuff, there's definitely heavy stuff to be found throughout the history of this podcast. So check it all out. TheThunderUnderground.com. You can listen right there. You can listen pretty much anywhere podcasts are heard. Places like Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Music. YouTube, of course. YouTube is at The Thunder Underground. And all the social medias. Follow me on all those. There's a lot of content that I put out that is separate from these podcast episodes. So give me a follow on all that stuff. And anytime you see a post, if you like, comment, or share, that's a very easy way to help this podcast. It's free. And if you like, share, subscribe, that throws my podcast into your algorithm. And of course, it throws it into your friends or your connections on social media. I don't need to explain this to you. I'm just looking for free help in spreading the word here. So appreciate you. Do what you can. Like I said, thethunderunderground.com, all over the place. Can find it. It's not that hard. You Google it, you're going to find an Ozzy song, and you're going to find a children's book, I believe, that came out called Thunder Underground. And then, of course, this podcast. So give us a follow. I've got t-shirts, koozies, shot glasses, all that great stuff, stickers. Hit me up if you're interested. And, of course, if you see me out and about, we can make it happen that way as well. All right. Once again, a massive thank you to DEB Concerts, Rocklahoma Bitches, Sunset Tattoo, Adam Splitter PR, and of course, Gridiron. And until next time.
Thunder Underground, y'all.